works. It all should work. Holy shit, brother! We're about to go on into space. My drummer Nick was in Florida for a trip recently, and he saw a SpaceX launch just like on accident.
I would plan that. I'd love to see that, drive all the way down or whatever.
Yeah, it'd be so worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, my audio's not working. I can roll without that, but I'd like to make it happen. Let's see.
Audio
here.
sounds good. Sign language.
Oh, they gotta see the ugly back end of this. Shit! Oh, I'm gonna run the other room while this clock ticks down. 28 seconds.
Hurry.
Do all that just to get the back.
And welcome back to Weekly Wave. Taking over.
My brother Justin Todhunter, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
God, that was a lot of effort just to get the back end of that.
Had me sweating.
Well, and my favorite thing about the intro music is one day I was a good bit inebriated. I'm like, today's the day I make this.
Yeah.
And I make a minute and a half of an intro. I'm like, no one wants to hear a minute and a half of intro. That's some nonsense.
Right.
It's a learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks again for coming on today, man. And thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, man. It was a lot of fun.
Let's start with the program. What's the name of the company you work for?
The Ken Anderson Alliance, and the program that I'm a part of is Melodic Connections, which is under the umbrella of Ken Anderson Alliance. So Ken Anderson Alliance does a lot more than just the music program that I'm in. And we did the podcast on Fridays. The other 4 days a week, I do music at the studio in Silverton. So
cool.
Like today, we pick. Actually, our participants pick the songs. Adults with disabilities is who we work with, and they pick the songs I'd say every 6 weeks or 2 months or so, completely democratically. We just throw out, hey, what do you want to play? And they'll throw 50 songs up, and we'll vote on the top 5 or so, you know, and just spend the next 6 weeks just nailing those songs and getting them down. And everyone loves it. You'd think at some point someone would be like, man, I don't like this song, but everyone loves every song, and they are so much fun. And they're pop hits. You know.
And what's it been like to continually have to deconstruct these hits on other people's whims, too?
Right. Well, it's something I do on my own for fun. I love breaking down songs. It's my way of, learning a song is to just, I'll try to record a full cover of it. Drums, bass, keyboards. And it really is a lot of fun to dig into every little part and listen to what's going on here. And so many times with the songs that we do at work, we might pick a Justin Bieber song or a song that I would never really kind of consider and maybe go into it like, this will be all right, whatever. And it turns out to be one of the best songs just as far as fun to play, know.
And after the fact, do these go on to the same Spotify playlist that hosts the... Well, I guess that has some rights involved in it, where it's like you probably can't release everything in that.
We don't record the performances. There are a couple live concerts a year.
Yeah.
But we just do it for fun. It's we'll break down the instruments, guitar, bass, keyboards, drums, vocals, and all the instruments are tuned, like the guitars and basses are tuned open and color coded.
Yeah.
So it's like an open D chord, D major, and then that'll be orange and have an orange tape on the 12th fret. And then, second fret will be a yellow tape, and that'll be an E chord.
Yeah.
So it just makes it easy with one finger to just strum,
And when you walked into this program, did it have all these different elements of the podcast and this kind of studio work?
The studio work for sure. The podcast was pretty much brand new when I started.
That's awesome.
I think we'll get to Fox, but he was one of the first or second guests ever when I started. So
And when you joined this job network and started working with these folks, was it something that you kind of been in the side wing of for long enough, or just a change of pace?
Yeah, I had always thought about going back to school for music therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I just love being a musician, and I thought that, I was kind of getting, we played so many gigs and just kind of getting kind of burned out and uninspired, and thought of trying to think of other ways to use music productively and for the betterment of people. And so I thought that would be the best route. And I hadn't even heard of Melodic Connections. I didn't know that it existed. And a friend mentioned it, and I just cold called. And I was like, I just heard about this place. It sounds super cool. Can I just come check it out? And Betsy, who was the founder at the time, well, she's the founder, but she was also running at the time, just welcomed me in, and I was able to come in and take a tour, and immediately fell in love with it. Like
Yeah.
immediately. The first time I just walked in the door, all the folks kind of came up and just wanted to know about me. Like I was their best friend immediately. Want to know about my dog and just what I do, So fell in love with the people. And then once I saw the music and the joy and the enthusiasm and the science behind it, it was like, I need to do this, So I was at Sam Ash at the time, and I needed a full-time position. And at the time, she couldn't offer that. So I was like, okay, well, let me know, if something happens down the road. Like 2 weeks later, she called back. I think we can make it, carve you out a spot. Yes, and it's been the best job I've ever had.
It's so cool when you hear about folks that, like, one of the things that I've always felt encouraged by in my own family is if you're going to pivot passionately.
Right.
Like if you're going to make a life change, like see what you want, go for it so clearly that it's like there's only one way this works out. And it's either that direction or it's a door that we didn't see being open, being a clear walkway for you.
So I hadn't even really considered that to be a possibility. I thought that, I need to go back to school and just everything, I was in my mid to late 30s, and going back to school at that time seemed just daunting and like, that's probably just not going to happen, So that'd be cool. And then once I found the place and they were gracious enough to give me a spot or take a chance on me, really, just come off the street, I was just so grateful, and it was such a perfect fit.
And did you end up going back and getting a music therapy program?
No, and I thought about that, and Betsy was like, you're kind of doing what, I'm not doing music therapy. I'm not a music therapist, and there's a clear delineation between the two, but I'm working in a similar fashion alongside music therapists. And instead of going into debt and taking all those years away, it just seemed like I'm happy doing this, and I'd love to just grow and learn from the folks I work with. And so I'm happy. Definitely it satisfied that itch,
Yeah, and it's incredible that like there's so many folks that, young people now are told you go to college and they'll figure out what you want to do in a career. Mm. And there's a lot of wasted degrees and wasted time out there.
And debt.
And a ton of debt and a ton of I don't want to say fickle experience. If you went to college because you wanted to party and you wanted to meet people and that was your jam, cool. I was a commuter, bro, okay, and I played in bars for a living. Like, I didn't need none of that nonsense.
Right. And
there's so many jobs that people are afraid to apply for or go knocking at because they say, I don't have the degree to do so. And it turns out what you need is the in-house experience to learn what the job is that you're being asked. And if you don't burn your capacity to work happily and learn something new, going through a broke classical music program, trying to take classes that have nothing to do with the inevitable job, you have more headroom to go in and kick ass at the exact job you want.
Yeah, it seemed very just like fortuitous or just lucky. It's like a perfect situation that just kind of happened, and I'm very grateful for it. It seems like I really couldn't even imagine a more perfect job. I get to play music every day, help folks, work with the amazing crew, the staff there. Everyone is an amazing musician.
Yeah.
And incredible bands in town. So,
was there a big learning curve for you with the interpersonal side of working with folks with disabilities?
Yeah. For some folks, most of them just, it was natural. They just, it's a common sort of love of music and shared experience to just have fun. But yeah, there's a little bit of a learning curve, for some folks.
Totally. Well, I'd imagine like it's almost like people's first year of teaching. It's like there's a lot of people that are at a similar stage in life on paper, but what that turns out to be in your day-to-day is super different. And every relationship deserves to have its own tools that you approach it with and try to be loving in that aspect.
Yeah.
But like you said, to have this baseline of the music is why we are here together in that.
Right.
And to constantly put different resources in people's hands to find out how they can participate in the music. I think that's almost 100% of what we're missing as a listener populace is the opportunity to be involved in the music and to know what that takes.
Yeah. Community is a big part of music in a band and the work that I do. So that was something that I kind of kept in mind too, was, you can't play music with folks and come out of it feeling in a bad mood. You're on, whether they're strangers or whether they are classical musicians or professionals, like you're just going to connect and you're going to come away from it with a better feeling, a better mindset. And I see it there every day. And we've learned some pretty cool sort of mind tricks, as far as like, um, the vagus nerve and the way rhythm can help get you on track. If you're out of sorts, sometimes just a simple rhythm, they call it entrainment,
Yeah.
locks you in. It just takes a few minutes, and it can bring you centered. And it's like a de-stressing sort of tool for everybody.
Yeah.
It's an important thing. It goes to the heart of like the heartbeat. And just the way a mother rocks a baby is at the same tempo. It all kind of just centers you. It's a magical thing.
That's super interesting. So it's almost like your sympathetic nervous system versus your parasympathetic nervous system, and how you learn these methods of what you need to do in a day to try to calm one half or the other.
Yeah. And there may be times where you need to de-escalate something, and there could be certain songs, whether maybe it could be the lyrics that bring someone centered, or the rhythm of it, or particular songs that maybe someone has memories to. It could be good or bad,
Yeah.
So it goes in both ways. But it's really it's magic. And when I saw music therapists do this, like just kind of fix a situation that may be going off the rails using music and using rhythm, and it was like, that's amazing. And you need to go to school to really kind of nail it the way they do, and it's admirable and just so impressive to watch. But I just try to soak up as much of that as I can.
Yeah. Well, I think you definitely need the degree if you want to be the type that develops the strategies with people and helps, like, you're almost like that case manager where it's like, we're going to find out what aspects of this are most beneficial for you and then put these things around you to kind of work with. But you just being in the wing of this, working with it every day, it's like, have there been any of these methods that you've taken back into your own personal life and found out, like, this is why I've always loved this song?
Yeah.
Or this is why 3/4 makes me feel like a better person.
Right. Yeah. Well, definitely rhythms, we'll break down lyrics, and sometimes you can listen to songs and the lyrics take on different meanings when you kind of break them down, as opposed to just listening to it passively. It's all, the difference between like passive listening and active listening. And,
Yeah.
But just some sort of like psychiatry tools, we do, I'm trying to think of there's a certain term that we'll use. Well, there's all sorts of things like that. We have one thing called the 3 Ps, which is like prepare, plan B, or like a practice, plan B, prepare, and plan B. So basically, if you know something could go a certain direction, you can kind of prepare for it, and then have like a plan B for if it goes off the rails again. And these could all be music related, but they could also be things you use in your normal life,
Yeah. When it's like, especially in the studio setting, everyone gets a little bit of red light syndrome. There's something really scary about, like, I've been practicing this for hours. It feels really comfortable. The moment I tell you it's on, like, we're fucking doing it, everything goes into this tight clench. Like speaking of Foxy, like, I tortured him one day. Like, there was one day where I made Fox stand in front of a microphone for maybe 6 hours. And I'm just like, so I'm going to play you back something from that last take that I love, and I need you to do it at least 15 more times in different places that you like, and then I'm probably going to ask you to do something totally different about that.
Right.
And at the end of each take, it's just like asking someone to take a deep breath and prepare to do that exactly again. It's more mentally tasking than folks give it credit
for.
Right.
Some folks do that naturally and just are so great at it, and I'm not one of them.
Well, and you have to have people you feel comfortable with on the other end of the booth kind of controlling that and talking you through this, because it's so vulnerable to be in front of a mic. And I tell people that play in their bedroom and things like that, and they're songwriters, but they don't have live performance. There's something so forgiving about a live show that you may not think that the audience gives you permission to mess things up, but they do, because the moment is gone. Like, yeah, you're probably going to catch a video of it at some point. You're going to have to grimace at what you did. But if you don't have those at-bats where you're fine with, oh, I ripped this solo, and it turns out I was a half step off the entire time, and I don't know how I let myself do it.
Right.
I had a great situation this weekend. We were playing Cleveland, and the band that opened up the show was this badass instrumental horn band, and we didn't have the horns with us. So I was like, hey, if you guys are cool with it, don't put that in the case. Like, just pick a song, come up, and rip a solo.
Nice.
So back to back to back, these guys will walk up, and they're asking me what key it is. I'm like, I'm pretty sure horn players have different keys for what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. So I'm just not gonna tell you shit. You know,
Right,
like you're just gonna come up and get after it.
Use your
and-
ears.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Because I'm not the best informational leader in this. Like I don't have a good music background. I'm a tabs kid. You know.
Yep, same.
So relating to changing from when did you start playing guitar?
14, 15 years old.
Okay. Honestly, that kind of seems like a late bloomer for how much you
I
play.
had a
now.
guitar at 11, but it sat in the corner and collected dust for 3 years. And I took one lesson, and it was a bad teacher, really, is what I'm going to blame that on. He was more of just like showing off, look what I can do. And is way above anything that my 11-year-old hands could do or mine could conceive. So it just didn't connect. So it sat in the corner. And then I saw one of my friends, Ryan Adcock. I don't know if you know, he's a local singer-songwriter. And he played in our high school. He was a year older than me, and he played a high school concert. And I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. So I found out who his teacher was, which is Rick Layton. Went to him, and he was instrumental in all my learning. I mean, he just showed me all the coolest music that I'd never heard. He knew like what I was into and was like, if you like this, check out all this other stuff. And it just
Is it
all
singer-songwriter Rick Layton? Or like, is that a
He's,
guy that I would know around the scene, or does he just teach?
He teaches in Beachmont. I forget the name of the music academy. I think might be what it's called. It's on Beachmont. But he's in a band called the Twirlers.
Okay.
And they play in Beachmont.
Nice.
But he's just a great guitar and mandolinist. I didn't really learn. I wasn't playing mandolin at the time. But he just turned me on to all this great stuff. And back then this was like in the mid 90s. So he's like, go to the library, check out these VHS tapes and audio cassettes. And that's what I did just all the time. I would just check out everything because he always was showing me good stuff. And I just going back for more and more. So that's what a good teacher should do,
And how did you how did you navigate this first couple of years of lessons? Did you have a type of performance that you were aiming towards, like you wanted to be a solo player, or did you want to be a songwriter? How'd you kind of fit a mold?
Yeah, I just wanted to. I wanted to understand how songs were written, just from like a theoretical standpoint. I was never and am not really a songwriter. It was more of like, there's 1,000 chords out there. How do these people pick 6 or 7 in the perfect way, in the perfect order? There's more to it than just like randomly picking. I wanted to know that.
Yeah.
And then I love, Santana and David Gilmour and Trey and Jerry and all these guys. And they were just speaking, like it sounded like they were telling stories through their music. And I wanted to understand how that worked, like theoretically.
Yeah. Well, so did you already have those guitar heroes in mind when you were approaching?
Yeah.
Who turned you on to that style of like epic guitar voices?
Well, some friends showed me, the deeper cuts of Pink Floyd and David Gilmour. Like Dogs is one of my favorite songs of all time. Just it's the guitar solo in that, the harmonies in that is so amazing. So I kind of had those just from hanging out with friends and stuff. And then when I would go to him, he just was so good at saying, oh, if you like this, and you have to check out these other guys. And
nice.
That's kind of where it started. I was in a band with a guy who was into Fish when I was more into the Dead, and that kind of changed because Fish is more like a high energy, at that time, mid 90s. It's a little different than it is now, but back then he was just shredding, and I was like, okay, well, I need to learn that too. I need just to get into all this stuff,
Yeah, my cousin, we call him Bubby, and he's just like the most lovable fish nut that you'll ever meet.
Oh,
like
yeah.
that's his world. And as a kid, like I had 2 or 3 cousins that pointed me towards a lot of music where like my siblings liked rap and country and things like that I wasn't really into. But I'll never forget like the first time and I didn't even get like a good intro to jam. Like it was Waste that stood out to me.
Yeah.
But it was the first time that I saw that category like as an equivalent to what I loved in like Beatles and things like that.
Yeah.
And then it didn't happen till like maybe 4 or 5 years ago where I saw 3 back-to-back Fish shows at Bonnaroo. And I was like, oh, this was the perfect experiment.
It clicked. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the lights were there, the mood was there.
Yep.
Just running laps around a big field, like just having a good ass time.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
They say it, I'm sure it was the same with the Dead. I never saw the Dead, but people would say, they're not the best at what they do. They're the only ones that do what they do. And that's how I felt at like seeing Fish shows in the mid 90s. I knew that I was seeing them at their peak.
Yeah.
Like I felt like a kid in like 1977 seeing Led Zeppelin at Madison Square Garden. Just like, I'm seeing this. I know I'm in the moment, like seeing this great thing happen. I'm just lucky to be here right now. And it's so inspiring,
Dude, that's a really profound statement. It's like, don't aim to be the best at what you do. Aim to be the only one that does what you do. Like, we none of us really understand what makes us particular. Like it's really hard to find your standout qualities in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But if you surround people that are honest enough with you to point those things out, and then you take the careful criticism to refine it and really push that thing, boy, is it special to see people gain their identity on their instrument.
Yeah.
So how many years had you been playing before like you kind of knew who you were as a guitar player?
1 or 2, really. It came on pretty quick, and not to say that I was that good in 1 or 2 years in, but I just could see, like you were saying, you see someone responding to what you're playing in a different way.
Yeah.
Because I was never like a musician as a kid. I don't come from a musical family, and music classes in school were kind of boring and kind of hard. I didn't really get reading and all that. It just wasn't inspiring. So I thought, well, music may not be my thing. I mean, I love music, but playing it might not be my thing. But something about just the way it was connecting, and then the way people were kind of responding, like, oh, that's cool, like, do that again, or, and you're just doing something off the top of your head, and like I said, I can't really like recreate that. If you're fully in the moment, if you're not really paying attention to like what you're doing, you have to go back and see it.
Yeah.
But I was getting good responses from people, and I felt like, okay, well, I'm gonna spend some more time and invest into this.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting you say like you're not really paying attention, because like there is I feel like one of the great moments on any instrument is the moment that you do feel like you can kind of disassociate from the active thought of making it happen, and you're more just kind of living in the essence of it.
Absolutely, the flow state.
It's an eerie click, and the first couple of times it happens during these kind of like novice years of your kind of like you're dating your instrument. You're not married to it yet. You're just figuring this out. It feels like this thing that like, boy, do you go grabbing at it, you can just never fucking keep this thing.
That's a great way to put that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's times where like when you're in the moment and it's like working really good, you can almost get like too excited about it. Like, oh, this is great.
You can crush it.
Yeah, and then you're out. It's like, wait, no, okay, don't do that.
Well, how much songwriting do you do independent of groups that you're in?
So when I songwrite, it's more of just like putting chord progressions together in interesting ways. Like I was just watching these videos. My friend Rob came over this past weekend, and we were watching videos on how to make normal chord progressions more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of experiment with that. I only have maybe 3 originals, and the Freddies, we have like 20 years of music. Like 3 songs. But that's just kind of how I've never set that out to be a goal. Lyrically, I don't even want to start. Like that's not my, every time I try to start writing something, I'm like, oh my God, no, I'll stick to the music. But it was a really cool, interesting video about different ways and to make common chord progressions more interesting, and kind of get into that a little bit if you want. I haven't memorized it all, but there are some really cool tricks that he was giving examples of that were really fascinating, and that's kind of what I'm getting into when I'm at home and I'm just like working out different chord progressions.
Yeah. Well, I had a music theory teacher that my senior year of high school, like, I'd just been in guitar player classes up to a point, and this is the first time we're working like a real theory, and I'm sitting around horn players to get this in a really easy way.
Yeah.
And for me, it's so abstract. But we're talking about the number system and like the way you're going to take a 1-6-4-5 progression. Like, who else can go into these slots and add kind of that intentional dissonance? Like, is that kind of the thing you're talking about?
Kind of, but ways you can maybe write a 1-6-4-5. Let's say that sounds good. Okay, then you're like, well, there's a lot of maybe 1-6-4-5 songs out there. What else can I do to this 1-6-4-5? And one of the examples the guy was saying is take everything that's not the tonic. So let's say you're in C. So that'd be like what? C, A minor, F, G. So take the A minor, the F, G, move them all up a minor third. So 3 frets. But then just write that chord progression out, and it sounds beautiful. And
so would that be C, C minor, A flat?
No, C. So C stays the same.
Yeah.
So the A minor would go up to, I guess that would be like, C. Yeah, that'd be C minor, and then F would go up to what? G flat, or
would it be an A flat?
G? Yeah.
Yeah, A flat and then B flat. It's like, oh, that's
so. If you had a guitar, I mean, it's pretty interesting, because it sounds, and then it resolves back to the root in such a cool way. And there's certain modes that these are derived from. Another one you can do, and it's all based off keeping the tonic where it is and the other chords, shifting them in different ways. One is to just drop the non-tonic chords a whole step. Is an interesting way to do it. I did have a little thing because I was like, I screenshotted the formula for
Yeah.
each one, and I was like, we're going to try to write examples of each one,
Yeah.
So I could I haven't completely put it to memory, but we could do examples of them or just show it. I could send it to you some other time and just
That'd be
give it a
awesome.
shot because it's.
Well, if you want to do it
everything
on
we're doing-
mandolin, I would love to open up the mic for you.
Oh, well, I haven't. Yeah, that's.
That's an even different bag.
We could try it. I haven't. Yeah, I wasn't even doing it on mandolin at all. Oh, my phone's dead.
I can grab you an acoustic real quick.
Sure, let's give that a shot.
I don't know that we've done much theory on this podcast.
And I'm probably the last one that should be doing theory stuff, but these things were just exciting,
And not only is it's an interesting practice in letting go of what you're comfortable with.
Yeah. And what I think it came from for me was playing with folk bands for so long. Everything's a 3-chord major song.
Yeah. Need a pick?
Yeah. And
My bad.
so, I'm trying to think of ways that we can use it in our band.
Mm-hmm.
Or just maybe something more fun to jam over. That's kind of also what I do at home is try to find interesting chord progressions to just try different modes and scales and just kind of put all the theoretical stuff, make more sense to me in some way.
Yeah. And do you lean on the modes a lot in your soloing?
Not as much. What's hard about going between guitar and mandolin for me is I kind of tend to think I play mandolin like a guitar player. I've been told that. People that come up, it's like, you're a guitar player, aren't you? I'm like, yeah,
Yeah. Well,
tail between my legs.
At least that doesn't hurt as much as being a bass player that plays like a guitar. Because, dude,
yeah,
for some reason that is like
so many notes and so busy and
yeah, and people don't like you for it. Versus if you're a mando player that does some guitar stuff, it's like, oh, you just sound like that. Versus bass players, you're like, cut that 6-string bullshit, okay?
Right, right. Yeah, there's that's kind of what I try to do. I remember reading an article talking about the first and last notes when you take a solo are kind of the most important ones. It's kind of a trite way to look at it, but the things you do in the middle are obviously important too. But I think the audience is going to catch on your first and last note more. And so, what are some interesting notes choices to go from? When you're learning, if the song's in G, I'm going to slam on that G note.
Yeah.
And find all the G's and hit the G's but he was saying maybe try starting on thirds or start on a second or a sixth or, and just take it. And each one of those is going to set you off in a different direction when you're improvising, which is kind of all I want to do, really.
Yeah.
I have a few written solos, but they're all mainly I like to just improvise. And you're taking a chance. Sometimes you're going to drop and it's going to be bad. And that's just how it is.
And you get something out of those experiences too.
Yeah. What not to do.
Yeah, that's
if
for
you remember
damn
that,
sure.
like, okay, maybe starting on the second's not the best idea every time, but
yeah. So can you walk me through that first one of just like the J was down a minor third,
up a minor third,
up a minor third. Okay.
And there were 3 that I'm trying to remember. One I think it was down 2 whole steps, and then the one that goes up the minor third, I believe that would be Aeolian mode.
Those modes are really abstract to me. Like when you're playing just the 8-note scale by itself, it's like, oh, it's nice to know that there's other things in this little box that I can go for.
Yeah.
But in the actual utilization of it, it's like, boy, those things uncomfortable to go dive in that. It's like.
And then another one too. He was talking about substituting. So those were like just shifting chords. But there was one about substituting them out of the natural minor, So if you're in, let's say, C, and you have a, 1, 6, 4, 5, then I was looking at it, like all the diatonic chords in a row, and then above it have, like, the C minor chords.
Yeah.
And I believe the 2 of C minor, if I get this right, it's a diminished.
Yeah, so it'll be like you're starting on 6, so it'll be a D diminished. Ew.
Is that right?
That makes sense to me, but
D diminished would be your 2 of C minor.
Yeah. So
6, 7. Yeah.
In that substitution, you're going C major to D diminished?
Well, no, you would throw that in at the end to resolve. Instead of resolving from a 5 to 1.
Yeah.
Resolve with the D diminished to 1. Right?
Gritty.
Yeah, and if that's what I'm thinking, so let's see, that would be like a, which does resolve nicely. And if he wasn't substituting a 5 for that.
Mm-hmm.
He was just kind of throwing it in at the end of a chord progression, like adding it to it. So instead of substituting it out, which is what the other ones were doing.
Yeah.
So let's try the other ones.
Like that C to C minor, A flat, B flat.
Well, so if C is the 1, so 1 and then 6, so it'd be strange to go. If you're going from 1 to 6, maybe let's keep it a little simpler. Let's do like a 1 4, maybe 1 3 4.
Okay.
1, right? So that would be like a 1 or. So normally that would be, right?
Yeah.
So let's see. So switching those out, that stays the same. So the E minor would go up to, is that like a G minor?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have C, G minor, and then the next one was an F, right?
Yeah.
So that would go up. Right? Is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I just have to check myself because I can kind of just run off the rails pretty easily. And then that would be the
resolution.
Well, that would come. Well, it would resolve back to 5. So
Gotcha.
let's do it again real quick. So we had 1, the original chord progression. So 1, 6, 4, 5. Right?
Yeah.
Is that what we're doing? Okay. So we've got C.
1, 3.
3. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1, 3. Sorry. Yep. So this would go to G minor. Right. And he was doing 7ths, minor 7ths, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then F would be G sharp, right? So it's pretty cool, and there's a chords that you wouldn't put a B flat major,
Yeah.
but it sounds pretty cool. It sounds different, but none of it's like bad to the ear. It's a different way of looking about it. You can kind of do that with different chord progressions and come up with some really interesting stuff.
Well, in the same way that you were talking about, like having rhythms that you can go to is like a calming sense. Like in my mind, a lot of this stuff is like basic hypnosis that you're using on others or using on yourself. And when you're looking for a song within a chord progression, it's going to take a little while to get comfortable with it. But when you just utilize the practice of being like, all right, I'm sick of this 1-4-5. We're going to jazz it up a little bit with just a weird concept, and we're going to push this out. Sitting there and learning what makes you comfortable about it and uncomfortable about it is going to merge new thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That the worst thing about a songwriting rut is writing something you like and then realizing it's just a reiteration of a song you already wrote and starting to feel like, oh man, I live in this fucking cage.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel in like the folk world. Is like, oh man, G again, G major. Okay, sweet. Let's play all these chords. Like,
yeah,
man, So that's just one way to kind of break out of it. I remember like another mystery with songwriters, and maybe you could speak to this. Is one thing that I always wondered about is, what comes first, melody or rhythm? Like, do you write a chord progression and then write a melody to that, or do you hear a melody and then you have to figure out, okay, if da-da-da, okay, that's the chords that go under that?
Well, I've been hearing so many things recently about like about more like the muse is like a concept of its own. Like it's not you channeling it. It's just like these things exist without you. And most of the time when I've really liked a song, it's shown up and said, hey, how you doing? Almost as is. It's like you just need to get in that flow state enough to let the whole thing come out. It's like, don't go diving in the microwave before this thing's cooked. And certainly don't try to rush it.
Yeah.
And there's really weird aspects to like, I'll sit there and get comfy with a chord progression, not really aiming for a song, but within mumblings, the word shows up and the outpour starts, and it's just like, are you ready to play catch with this thing, or are you going to be fighting this thought for the next 6 hours?
So do you grab your phone and just start writing?
Hopefully Voice Moments is already running. Hopefully I can already come back and catch it. Because if I get too in the weeds about it being right the first couple times, especially lyrics or chord changes, the more I miss the essence of the thing. Kind of like you're talking about with soloing. It's like, is it passive thought or an active thought? Like these kind of need to be passive things to get to know what's on the other side of this lens.
Yeah. It takes some patience for sure,
Yeah. Well, and right now I'm going through a bit of a sober kick, And boy, is my disdain for my own shit way higher when I don't have
We're
like
always our own worst critics. For
yes,
sure,
but kind of relaxing the active thoughts about what this thing is as it's getting printed. It's like watching a screen print and go back and forth on something. It's like it hasn't done its layer of red yet, and maybe this thing is mainly red. So
that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So as you're letting kind of the colors of a dissonant chord progression speak to you, or like oftentimes when I want to really think about my heroes and try to lean on, it's like, what would Bill Withers do? Well, he wouldn't have so many goddamn chord changes. Like he'd
Right.
relax a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you think about something as simple as Lean on Me. It's like he wrote something that was immediately accessible for everyone that walks up to that instrument and made it a song that you still never get tired of.
Right.
It's like that's not in the zeitgeist of the Freebirds and things like that you're done listening to because it's great.
Yeah.
It's like, no, everyone wants to learn it and play it.
And I wonder how many people have written maybe simple songs that maybe in their own head, and I can speak for myself. Like I might write something that is so simple that it's like, but people are going to get bored of this, or the musicians in the crowd are going to be like, come on, man.
Dude, yeah. We're always thinking about the musicians in the crowd.
Exactly. But, that you wouldn't write a song like Stand By Me or just a simple song.
Totally, yeah, something that feels so...
You might dismiss it. I just wonder how many songs are dismissed by the writers for being too cliche or too simple when they actually were beautiful, simple songs that needed to be heard. And
yeah, and in the way we were talking about Wolfpack or any great musical collection of songwriters, like to have people that ask about your best epics and your worst ideas and help you gauge it outside of yourself, pointing at the thing that makes it special.
Yeah.
There's so many songs that do get put by the wayside. We don't have a good grasp or understanding of, because we as the creator, like, you spend 6 hours working on a meal. You don't want to eat it by the end because you've been smelling it the whole time, you know, and these raw elements.
And there's so many stories of, classic albums and like the best song on the album. And they're like, that wasn't even going to make the cut,
Yeah.
We just thought that was a throwaway filler song and it turned out to be like the biggest hit of their career or something. And it's like, the author almost has no idea how it's going to be received.
Well, and do you find that playing in a band like the Freddies, when you kick melody ideas in, do those tend to be kind of beneath what you would have liked the part to be?
Not necessarily. Like sometimes with a few songs with the Freddies that I've helped write, is I'll send Jake a melody, maybe a simple chord progression and a melody that I have, and then he'll come back with like, oh man, that's great. Let's what if we change this? And he might change it for his vocal key to sing better in a certain key. And we'll bounce ideas back that way. So it turns out to be a different version than I initially sort of conceived, and I welcome that. I think that's so great.
Yeah.
There's one song that I can think of where I pretty much wrote it all the way through and gave it to him, and that's the way we play it. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, we just started digging that song back out. It's been a while. It's an instrumental that it changes keys like 4 times.
Nice.
But it doesn't sound like that. It doesn't sound like it changes keys 4 times. It just kind of flows into it, so it seems kind of seamless. I wouldn't put those guys through that.
Yeah, those are tough moments though, to try to take people on like a really well-developed musical journey that you don't feel forced to do so at any point. It's like a Goosebumps book where it's like, do you want to turn to 89? Because it's about to be sweet. Well, we're fucking going there. 5 of 5. Let's go.
Let's go. Oh yeah, yeah. It's a great outlet. Fox loves it. It's a great song that we can just kind of cut loose on. And again, it comes from being in this folk world of 3-chord major songs, and I just was like, we got to do something out of this. At least one per set or one per show, where we can just kind of stretch our legs a little bit and just have some fun. So that's sort of where that came from.
Yeah. Do you find that the instrumentation of that genre of bluegrass, kind of like jam and bluegrass, to be limiting, or do you love the really acoustic seam of it?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, there's no limits. It's amazing what people do now. You can, like Jacob Collier, Chris Thiele, all these guys that are just taking it to the next level.
Yeah.
And
is it Bela Fleck? Is that guy's name?
Bela.
Bela.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just disgusting. Just
probably my favorite musician alive. I think, really. I named my last dog after him. Just love that guy so much. And he's like, the reason I love him so much is that he'll take bluegrass and then just play it to its best, and then he'll go to jazz and play that like to its complete best, and then classical music, and he doesn't just dabble and show that he can play these things. He just gets into them and does them right.
Yeah.
He just did a Gershwin. He did Rhapsody in Blue.
Is
on
that
banjo?
Is that the one that's in the Disney? What's the? Gosh, I was just talking to my bass player. Do you know John Latier?
Not personally.
Okay, the beautiful Johnny Disco.
Mhm.
You two would get along great. He's a fucking monster.
Yeah.
But there's like, I don't even think I watched these growing up. But it's like Disney recreations of like epic, symphonies and things like that. And it's like this one where where Mickey Mouse is dressed as like a wizard, and it has this
Like Fantasia.
Fantasia.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
What is the music that Fantasia's to? Is it Rhapsody in Blue?
There might be some Rhapsody. I think it's a number of things, but Rhapsody in Blue might be in there.
For some reason, I'm thinking that's the one of the bits of it that he was mentioning to me. He's like, dude, the fact that my son now loves Rhapsody in Blue or loves Fantasia, is like, it makes me feel very fulfilled as a musical father.
Yeah.
Also, he's an incredible bassist, and his wife is a drummer. Their kids got to be gnarly keys players.
I hope so. Yeah.
We got to fill this
section.
Yeah. We got to get Cordal about this.
Yeah.
You cannot have bass playing and drumming kids. Okay.
Right.
It's gonna be a pain.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how long did you do the retail thing?
4 years or so.
Okay, so it was a pretty
3.5
short stint.
years. Yeah.
And
That kind of bounced around. In my 20s, I was just playing a lot and teaching. That was kind of my whole thing. And then you're teaching private lessons, and then the band was starting to have families, and I just, we didn't play as much. So and teaching was kind of getting stale, I guess is the right way to put it. So I was a theater projectionist for a while. And that was fun. Actually, that was super cool. I enjoyed that a lot. But
what do you mean a theater projectionist?
Like when theaters had film, because now it's all digital. So I was up there, like the movies would come in these giant reels, and you had to assemble them, because you can't ship a whole movie in one piece. So you had to like learn the different formats, and then put the heads to the tails and line it up just right, or else halfway through the movie it's going to be upside down. I'll tell you a horror story. We played there one time when it wasn't my fault, but someone else threaded the movie. It was when Star Wars came out. At that time, I forget which one, it came out around 2013 or 14. But it was a big one. Everyone was waiting to see it, and he started it at the end. So you just heard a gasp of the crowd in the audience. No. Like, they just don't want to see how it ends,
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
a forced spoiler alert in full reverse of like number 7. Or maybe it's like Revenge of the Sith or something wild like that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
You're seeing the peak of the movie first. It's like, no, stop.
What?
It's amazing. I can just hear the gasp of the audience.
Yeah. What part of town was this in?
The Western Hills.
Cool.
It was a Danbury Theater. I think we were the second to last theater in town that had a real projector.
Man, let's get into
Ancient,
the overbeaten question of like, is analog better in all of these fields of like, did you like the feel of a projected movie versus a digital movie?
I love the act of threading the projector itself. It was such a mechanical thing that had so many parts, and you pull the lever back and you get just the right amount of, you have to leave a little bit of gap. You can't just have the film tight or else it'll shred and rip. So you have to have a certain amount of give. And then you get it. So it's so many little things of feeling like, okay, that's about 3 fingers, space. And then you have to just thread it just right, and putting the movie together. I mean, that's you have to stamp it and cut it and get it, punch the holes on the sides that line up. And
you're probably one of the last generations I'll ever experience that too.
Yeah.
Whoa. What was your favorite movie that you threaded and watched for the first time, like almost in a consecutive manner?
Well, I never watched any of those movies because we had seven theaters going on. So it was when one's done, I got to go tap the other one and get it rethreaded for the next time that happens. And they all would happen at the same time, so you kind of get them all the movies would start at like 1:15.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm running around like a madman to get them all to start on top. And then you have to go check them every 15 minutes because if something, as they spin on the reel, if something catches, it'll mess up the works real bad.
Oh,
where
yeah.
You can't fix it really without stopping the movie.
Are the theaters calling and asking for these rolls back at the end? Like, I'm sure there's limited copies of these
things. You have them for a week and you have to pack them back up and send them to the next theater.
And they got to be perfect condition.
Pretty much, yeah.
That is absolutely...
They come in like travel cases, like gear, like we haul our guitars around and stuff.
Dude, that's hilarious to see a road case of these. And I'm sure like there's storage methods where it's like a ribbon mic almost, like can't be outside or else it's kind of like the colors kind of blend and things like that.
And you have to hope that it's labeled correctly because it would say, heads and tails, and you have to match those up, and reel 1, reel 2. If it's mislabeled, and that's probably how the the Star Wars thing happened. He just, I'm giving him some credit that it wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
It was just labeled wrong.
What about the audio on these things?
Yeah, I mean that would be
just tape deck. Like how you?
No, there's a track. There's a side track on the film that's.
No way.
That the audio is on there.
And what's the method that's being pulled from there? Is it like a typical cassette?
Yeah, I think so. Magnetic tape with a little sound strip on the side.
That is so wild.
And then there's the which I always love, but when the screen like burns out.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens if the film gets stuck in the projector. Then those things are flying by at 24 frames a second. So if it's on there, if it gets stuck, it takes a half a second for that light to just burn right through that. And it's a cool effect.
Yeah.
You're probably fired if that happens.
And I've never this sounds dumb, but like anytime you hear someone talking about 60 frames or 30 frames, like my modern idea of that is strictly like, can I use it for slow-mo or does it look shitty? Or when I go in to do edits on these things, I'm trying to get somebody's dumb face out of a frame. Like, how much minutia do I get to play with that? But I never thought about the pace of spin of 24 frames per second. It's 24.5 is like the standard.
I think so for film.
Yeah.
And it's different in different countries, So, like, I think in Europe, or I think so, their TV is 24 frames, and ours is like 30, I think.
Whoa.
And there's a subtle difference in the way the motion looks. It has a little blur to it, and I kind of like it more in a way. But it's just such a subtle little difference.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting the way that you grow accustomed to this very subliminal thing, to whether it's how people move or the way that color comes off the screen. I don't want to even bring up the outlets thing. I think that's just the wrong call. Like, we should be uniform about how we pull power out of the goddamn wall.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't want
240.
Every time I get a new pedal and it's going to come with that kind of shit, I'm like, I don't even like this. Why are you catering to them? To the U.S. of it,
Right.
Like, I could get a little too on the home team.
Right. One thing that just the last thing on the projector, because it was so
Please,
such a weird thing.
I love it.
Was it Fight Club where the guy, I think he was a projectionist, and he would like snip in frames. Like, they might not have been appropriate frames, but that's something you can do. You can like, and you can also like take out a frame, because there's so many frames per second, so you could take one out. Like, we had one guy who would collect his favorite frames from his movies and just keep a little envelope of like his favorite little frames.
And is this like something he's doing on the DL? Like,
yeah, because no one would really miss it, But you could also like put in a frame, which I would never do, but in the movie they did that.
Yeah. And
then it's like a subliminal. You get one fraction of a second of whatever you want to put in there.
Yeah.
And I've heard, theaters will do it to get you to buy candy and Coke and stuff. They'll throw in something to kind of make you hungry or whatever. I don't know if that's...
Dude, that's hilarious. You think the algorithm's good at guessing what you want? Like, what's way funnier is some dude analog being like, I'm going to put some peanut butter M&Ms in their lives, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to get deep in their stem.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that relates really well to... Sometimes you're listening to your favorite records, and if you're really actively listening, you can hear Michael's footsteps in the back of a vocal track, or you can hear somebody's cough at the end of a track.
Mm-hmm.
And those are things that, like, if scrubbing and cleaning, if you got it really perfect, you might miss some of those really human aspects of it. It's like...
And there's some, like the beginning of Roxanne, the Sting or Police Roxanne.
Yeah.
Right in the intro, a few seconds in, he, like... I guess he's doing a vocal take, and he like leans on a piano that doesn't have the cover down, so he like his butt just hits like a chord, like, and you can hear people laugh, and they kept that in. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
I'm sure they must have had some discussions over like, why are we really want to leave that in? It's like, well, let's do it, guys. Come on.
I've never noticed that. I don't get to listen.
I wouldn't
to
until someone said that, and it was like, oh, it's clear as day when you hear it.
Yeah, I think the most iconic one for me as a kid was Billy Joe Armstrong's "Fuck" at the beginning of Good Riddance.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he starts a song, botches it. Back in. And it's like those human moments make you feel like you're sitting in the room and you didn't want them to be perfect.
Right.
Right. One of my favorite Prince performances is he's playing at like Royal Albert Hall or something like that, and he has a bar stool that has a mic stand attached. So I'm like, who's making this guy custom furniture? Why does everything he does have to be cooler?
Right.
And he's playing Cream, and I didn't know the song Cream before that, but the way that he holds the audience in the palm of his hand so well. They're singing background vocals to this song for him in a similar way like Jacob, where it's like, oh, they're just going to go where you want them to. And I don't know why they're doing that, but like you just seem to have that about you. And he'll put these pauses where they'll be singing in the background, they're clapping along, but for some reason, everyone in the room knows he's about to pull the rug on you.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kind of looks down and comes back with a smile, goes, and the eruption of joy that people have, and just like him being happy with the moment and just wanting to stop and soak in it for a second.
It's magical stuff.
Yeah. And it's a great reason to not over clean things when you go into Logic or you go into Pro Tools. Like, where do we hear the people at in this?
Right. The argument of playing to a click or not, I think, is a similar thing. Like, you can get it to where you're just locked in, especially if you want to go the lock it in with synchronization or quantization.
If you do tracks and things like that.
Yeah.
I have more of an issue with tracks than I do with the click, because I feel like a click is this really definite center, and it's a bit of a distraction. But when you find bands that are great and they can bury it, boy, is it something subliminally sexy about that.
And it opens up the editing possibilities of you can chop and move stuff around versus if you have a song that's kind of speeding up and slowing down. And if you want to take a chunk of the verse and put it later, it's not going to line up,
Yeah.
So that helps. But, letting a song breathe a little bit and letting the song kind of push where there's momentum and maybe slow down a little bit where there's not. Like, that's, to me, that's as much of music as a chord progression, how you would write.
Yeah.
It's like putting that in there because that's the life of the song is it breathes a little bit. It has a little push and pull.
And do you like when those moments are communicated and intentional? Like, there's the Fish version of that where this group of people has been playing together for so long that they're just subliminally going to push it tonight, you know? Or like, maybe it's a dead reference where like there's 600 songs in the catalog. They're not going to play them the same way twice, whether that's dramatic changes in the tempo or just down to the solos.
Right.
But then you also have like Papadozio, where it's like everybody on stage is a talk back.
Yeah.
And it's like amidst the chit chat of like, do we still have Cheez-Its in the car? It's also like, let's bump this up a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's take them to church,
Yeah. Yeah. It could, if it's organic, I don't think it should happen organically. I don't think it would work as good if someone said like, okay, for this song or for this take, let's push it. I mean, you can push it in general, but the song itself might just kind of speed up and slow down on its own. And if it's right, it's not really discussed. It's sort of the band just feels like, okay, maybe the drummer probably pushing it and pulling it.
Yeah.
Everyone goes with them. Active listening in the band is so important. The biggest thing I ever got from Fish was just listen so hard to what your bandmates are doing and focus on that so much, more than yourself or more than anything. If the band is going to succeed, that has to be happening. And it's kind of a rare thing. I mean, I think people do it maybe in moments, and I'm guilty of it too, but it's just the most important thing,
Well, it's weird to get passive with what you're playing and to actively participate in what everyone else is doing. And, your stage mix has so much to do with that. But, dude, I'm someone that was guilty for so long of bottlenecking my own band and what they're capable of doing because I thought I need to lead this in a certain direction. It's like, I'm sensitive about it because it's my material. For the most part, I'm booking the shows. I have a very clear idea of what I'm trying to give the audience.
Yeah, you're invested.
And sometimes the band wants more musical things, and I think the audience does. But especially when you pull a guy off a solo when he's about to kind of hit the precipice of this thing, like really go on the cusp of it, boy, do you really demolish relationships like that.
Pull the ripcord on him too soon. Yeah.
And you take something from them that they would have been walking away from that night. Like, I like what you said about like, how can you not have a good time playing with friends and playing music with strangers? But there's a lot of nights where like, if things are really tense, you're going to, you definitely don't. Like,
right.
And that's as fair as anything else. There's something great about that honesty there. But,
totally. And that could be a discussion for, the green room afterwards. Like, hey, man. What were you doing? I was right there.
Dude, that's why you have to record your shows, because if you're going to criticize or go to discuss a section, you need the objective, not the subjective experience, or else that gets so personal.
Right. And instant replay. Got to roll back the tape.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and really dig into the weeds on that. That shit's gnarly. Do you ever do the inners thing?
We just got them this past year, and we haven't. I haven't started using them yet because when I tried singing with them, it was that didn't work right away.
Yeah,
it was something about just the way I harmonized or the way I need to hear in the air, and it was so like in my ears and so like sterile that I wasn't able to harmonize.
Yeah.
Playing, it sounded great. It sounded like you're in a studio, which I love. And so I know there's a way to do it. And some people maybe take one out or if you mix it just right, you can get a natural vocal. But for me, the singing was so not natural that I couldn't harmonize well.
Yeah.
So
In my experience, it makes you so aware of the little differences that like it can almost be intolerable for you as like a listener to what you're doing. But on their experience, like whenever I listen back to it, it's always better than what it would have been without that.
Yeah.
But like that's just like sometimes I feel like you got to put a little reverb in there to sweeten it up a little bit for yourself. Panning is so nice. But boy, does it bother you when the proximity to the note that they're singing that you don't like is right here. It's just beating you in the drums, man.
Yeah. And, Jake will mention sometimes he'll go a few songs through and not even know like that we're taking solos or he'll know that we're taking solos, but he's not really listening to that. He's probably thinking of the next line or something that's coming up. So he'll admit it. We'll listen back to recordings or stuff. He's like, oh, I had no idea you were doing that, or I had no idea. So
yeah,
it just goes in one ear, not the other, literally.
Dude, the funniest thing is when guys go looking at other people's in-ear mixes and they start, they're like, you don't have any of me in your fucking mix.
Right.
It's like, what am I supposed to do?
Right, yeah. Sorry, don't need you.
Yeah, I love those oddly personal moments. It's hilarious. So you played guitar for 2 or 3 years and started to find your voice. What was this odd call to go to the most difficult iteration of a stringed instrument? You know?
I heard, like I said, big Grateful Dead fan. So there's an album, Garcia Grisman, and they have a number of albums together, David Grisman and Jerry Garcia. But there's this one called Garcia Grisman that I just loved so much. There's a song called Arabia on there that's amazing. A really cool version of Friend of the Devil. It's really slow, even slower than like the slow Dead version, but it was just so beautiful. And another album called Tone Poems, which is Tony Rice and David Grisman.
Nice.
So I was like, this David Grisman guy is killing it. I need to hear more of his stuff. And I just found he's like my biggest mandolin influence.
Yeah.
And
what's the tuning on a mando?
From low to high, G, D, A, E. So it's fourths.
Okay.
Like a violin.
Gotcha. Oh, the thing that confused me most about a violin is that it feels like an upside down guitar.
Yeah.
It's like, man, none of my shapes fucking work on this thing.
And Rick Layton, we were talking about him. He told me when I told him I was like getting into mandolin, he's like, dude, here's the trick. Just think of a guitar like flipped. No, that doesn't help me. that doesn't help at all. Like the
just
root
made me angrier.
Right. It's like I can't. So I'd learn from scratch. Just the way I learned guitar. I had to learn my major and minor chords in 1 or 2 positions, then go on to the sevenths and minor sevenths. And
yeah,
it was very strategic. Like I need to know where these things are in multiple places.
And do you feel like knowing an instrument, at the level that you did, helped you approach your method of learning mando so much better?
Totally. I knew what I needed to know. I knew that I needed these chords under my fingers. I needed to know, I call them column 1 and column 2. Like on guitar, the 6th string would be like my column 1 chords, and then the root around the 5 string would be like my column 2 chords. So major, minor, 7ths. So on mandolin, that's like, okay, well I need to do that on mandolin now. So I would learn.
And why do you call it columns? Like, explain that.
Just to think of like the chords going up and down on this.
Oh, okay.
Like these shapes.
Yeah.
The major, minor off the 6th string would be anything off the 6th string where the root's on the 6th would be my column 1 chord.
Yeah.
And then column 2 would be off of the 5 string.
Yeah.
And then you go further, that's how I started, but you can go up to the 4-string chords and the 3-string chords, all the different triads and all that.
And did you ever do like the cage system thing?
No, but after I learned about that years later.
Yeah.
So that is helpful. That's not how I was taught.
Yeah. I'm just starting to try to implement something like it does make things brutally obvious at times, and like that's so much fun in terms of shapes. But dude, I still get stuck in the box of like, boy, would I rather have a dot here to tell me where to go.
Yeah, right. A cool thing I learned too on guitar, just a good practice when I was learning, was to try to stay within like a 4 or 5 fret range and play all the chords of a song instead of jumping around something like that. Like, okay, how can I play all those right here?
Yeah.
And that really helped to be able to play a full chord progression in one spot.
Yeah. And do you feel like getting used to some of those tighter configurations, especially like your 3-note voicings and things like that, prepared you better to make the jump to mandolin?
Probably. It helped. Just playing a fretted instrument, I think, just was important, just to know how it should feel and how much pressure to put down and how to, adjust. I remember learning the F chord and the G chord in the beginning. It just was it's all muted and everything. And it was all about putting your wrist and getting your elbow and all that. So on mandolin, it was the same process.
Yeah. Do you mind switching to mando so I can ask you some particulars on this?
Sure.
When you have your what's your thumb placement like on a mando? Because I get what you're saying about having that wrap to get the articulation,
Right.
but it's not big enough that you're gonna go center on there. So are you kind of wrapping like?
Well, you want to have this angle. You don't really want to play it flat. You want to have an angle like this.
Yeah.
So you can
It's more classical kind of guitar feel.
Yeah, there's just some things you're just not going to be able to comfortably do if you're flat like this. So, coming from an angle like that really helped. And then some people would put their thumb on the back. Yeah. But I tend to kind of put mine over the top a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And do you ever rap with your thumb for certain voicings and things?
No, because you can reach it with your pinky.
Yeah.
It's not that far.
That's the weirdest thing is playing in such a close quarters.
Right. And I would learn, like when I was starting to learn, the G chord and all the kind of the chop was the goal, was to get to this. But I couldn't do that right away. So I had to start with the 2-finger version and get that, and then add this finger, and that was the best I could do for a while. Yeah. And then get that, and then you can finally, get the chop going.
Did your pinky use on guitar really change because of that? Because of the amount of stretching that you were doing to make these chords happen?
A little bit, yeah. And I never really used the pinky too much, except for, maybe like extensions on chords, but it's not like I wasn't doing much like bending with it, so it was a lot of that going on. Yeah. And with mandolin, you really have to kind of use it.
And you're bending with the pinky a lot? Like, there's some, like, more detailed screeching bend where it's like, I'll use a lot of pinky on that, but not like a lot of in-between phrases, adding tension and moving on kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've started to use the pinky more on guitar, just a little bit. Yeah. And I've gone between different bending styles of maybe bending with these 2 fingers, and then I've seen some people bend with their pinky in there, and it's like...
It's kind of gross to watch,
A little bit, yeah. And the gauge string you use is important, but...
Yeah, and when you're playing a 2-string per note kind of instrument like that, what does your attack look like with your pick, or when you're open-handing it? Like...
Yeah, you want to just hit it like it's one big string. You don't want the da-dun. So that's important to kind of come at it at the right angle to do that.
Do you find that you approach flatter with the pick, or more like over?
There's a little bit of a down angle.
Yeah.
You don't want to come really kind of flat on it. You want to kind of come at an angle with it.
Yeah, and when you're working on like basic
tremolo, that kind of stuff needs that.
That type of fanning is the most nonsensical thing to have to, like, learning how to do that will make you feel like you've never touched your instrument.
Right.
Just like straight 16ths, just trying to get comfy there.
No. I have a mandolin. Oh, here it is. Another thing too is a mandolin pick. For the longest time, I just thought I'll just play with guitar picks. You know? And someone's like, you really need to get a mandolin pick, and they were right. Yeah. I use these blue chip picks. There's a lot of different ones out there. I used the dog picks for a while, David Grisman dog picks. Okay. They're all, the important part is the beveled edges and that they're really hard. But the beveled edges are good for the tremolo. Yeah.
And when you say beveled edge, like what?
Like it's not just rounded. There's a little bit, here, check it out. They slant at a certain way, so where you're not coming. Oh. It helps you kind of keep it fluid.
Yeah, and 55, that shit feels like a quarter.
Yeah. That's the Chris Thiele version. But there's different ones that are different sizes, and these particular ones don't really deteriorate. I've had this 7 or 8 years.
One of the best pieces of advice that I got, more than a decade into my playing experience, and I'm always losing picks like an idiot. I'm always buying more. My buddy Kevin Fox, he goes, I go to every gig with 3 picks. I leave with 3 picks. No, right. I was like, dude, that's nonsense. You're not leaving with 3 picks. If you have just enough that you can really keep track of, you'll stop losing picks.
I would lose probably 3. But if you buy a semi-expensive pick, like a $30, $40 pick or whatever, it's like, you're going to keep that.
It's a $30, $40 pick?
Used.
That is wild.
Yeah, but it's worth it. I noticed the sound difference right away, and it just doesn't deteriorate. A lot of times, you got to go through picks. They break. The ones I was using before would get kind of scuffed up edges, and you could hear it. It sounded kind of rough. Yeah. This is a lifer, as long as I keep it up, don't lose it.
Yeah, do you keep that in the case or keep that in the pocket? Okay.
I keep that, just right in there.
Yeah, always.
All the time.
And is this your primary gigging mando?
It's my only acoustic mandolin. So I love this thing so much. I was kind of telling you the story of it before we got started.
Yeah, so this is the friend's gift.
Well, I bought it, but I bought it at a much lower price than it should have been, and that was a gift in itself.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
We're kind of a little bit of that story.
Yeah. So I mean, I can go back to the beginning of it was in 2013, right after Christmas. My house was broken into. Coming home from work and my front door is unlocked, which is not a good sign. And I could tell everything was gone. You just looked around, and my first thought, besides just the gut punch of that, was is somebody still here? You know, I have 2 floors, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of like. At first, I'm just thinking I should just back out and maybe call the police and let them go through everything. But I did kind of look around and was kind of like, hey, you know, just
Yeah.
maybe not the smartest thing to do.
Identifies.
Right.
Hey, I'm the homeowner.
Yeah, I'm unarmed. You know,
Super friendly guy.
Right.
Here's my ID.
yeah. In case you missed anything, point it. You know, but so I was looking around. Everything's gone. I had a really amazing mandolin that my dad got me when I was starting mandolin. You know, when he's like, take it seriously, I'll get you a good one, because I had a really piece of shit to start with.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, you know, here's a nicer one, and to get started. And you know, I ended up playing that for 10 years. We played that at Music Hall. You know, we were on Prairie Home Companion, which is like a national show, and that was such a big memory. So that sucked, you know, to lose that. But everything, you know, the computers and TVs and cameras, everything was gone. So, you know, big gut punch there. And
Did you have any insurance for all this stuff?
a little bit, but I didn't know at the time that if music is how you make your income, that it's a different insurance. I just had like renter's insurance, but I should have had insurance on these instruments, and like these are how I make my living.
Yeah.
So when I went to make the claim, they were gonna pay it in full, and they were like, "Well, so what do you do for work?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I perform and teach music." And they're like, "Oh, this is how you make your money. That's a different insurance."
The fact that they'll do that to you is the dirtiest thing.
Yeah.
And like insurance companies are not looking to pay out, you know, like, and that's a really sad position to be in. Not an endorsement, just a plug. Music Pro Insurance has been a very good thing.
Okay, yeah.
That website makes it super easy, and like you don't have that nightmare till you hear about that nightmare with somebody else. It's like, boy, do you need to be on top of your shit.
Take
Serial
pictures,
numbers.
serial numbers, big time.
Yeah.
Pictures of all the little cracks and dents and things that can identify it.
Yeah, quit taking gear porn and get to the nitty gritty. Okay,
Right.
Show me why your input jack doesn't work, so
Right.
the pawn shop can identify this.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean now I don't know, with what are they, Apple tags or whatever, you can.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. You
Dude,
can
it's
stick one up in there. You know, it's so
That's
great.
brilliant.
Just knock on someone's door. Like,
Dude, my mandolin's on Snapchat maps. Okay, I have an iPhone 6 in
Right.
there.
is that a gig? You know, shit. It's like, oh, man. So
Was the sentimental stuff, like, I'd imagine, especially with such a clean slate kind of incident, like, it's all devastating, but did the lingering feeling of the sentimental stuff still kind of haunt it, or?
yeah, I mean, I would love all those things back, but I would love one or two, like, for different reasons. You know, it was just, that was terrible. But within a week, you know, some friends, I just told a few friends, and you know, like behind my back, they're putting a GoFundMe together and throwing getting a benefit started, and I can't even tell you how that felt, you know. And then you know, some media folks were reaching out, like the news and the Enquirer and everything. They just wanted to do an article, so it spread out. So it kind of was like a little viral kind of thing. Like I had 800 something shares of people, you know, just spreading the word and getting random messages from complete strangers from other states, countries. You know, it's like, what are they getting? Some guy in like England was like, "I'll keep an eye out." Like, you're probably good, dude. You know.
He goes, "You ever think about an Apple tag?" You're like, this fucking guy.
But pretty amazing turn of emotions. You know, to go from something like that, devastating, and then a week later, just getting this outpouring of love from strangers. It was so cool. And part of that, so after the fundraiser and the gig, I was able to, that with my insurance, get instruments back that I needed to perform. And Graham, who's in the Freddies, he's been one of my best friends forever. He's just such a great guy. Had this mandolin. He worked at Famous Old Time Music, which was a place in Carthage, like years ago, bluegrass store. And he worked there and was in their band. And they paid him with this for years of performing, but it never had strings because he's a tenor guitar player and was a banjo player at that time. So he never really had this set up or anything. It was just kind of sitting around, and it's a really, really nice one.
Yeah.
And he offered it for a lot less than it would sell for. He's very gracious, and so part of it is just like for him and for the band and for the love that I got from all that.
Yeah.
So that's why it's just this very special instrument for me.
And what a cool thing to get to play that together, you know, so often and have it to be one of your main workhorses.
Yep.
what else kind of like when you went through the priorities of what you need to get back to gigging? What were the main guitars that you kind of had to go out looking for and whatnot?
Well, I wanted copies. I wanted the same thing. So I went out looking for the same year and models of what was stolen.
Yeah.
You know, I could have maybe gotten maybe an upgrade or something newer, but for me, I just wanted what I had. You know, it's just even if it's not the same exact thing, that's just, it felt right. You know,
it kind of gives some closure to the situation to walk in.
It felt more natural, yeah. I could look around my music room and be like, that's what I always had. You know, it's not the same one, but it's the same. It's kind of the same. You know, so I had a Mexican Strat, but I wanted like that year. It was a 2000. You know, I think it was a 2000. You know, kind of a purpley sort of thing with some lace sensors or something. So I just wanted that one. Yeah. And I saw it in a pawn shop, and for a second I was like, you know,
dude, that's like paying twice for the same thing.
Right. I would have gladly, you know, I just wanted it back, you know. But I went in, it wasn't the same. I could tell it had a few different markings and stuff, but it was the same make and year. So I was like, you know, made a deal on it, and I had a Martin 000M, which was really nice. It's like a auditorium model.
The best shaped acoustic ever.
Yeah,
you know, it's like
small enough to, you know, but still punchy.
Oh yeah, well, that's what I really love about it. And I think that's why like the Clapton model and like John Mayer be playing those things. Like this thing is just super front of mix, but you can still open it up and strum 6 strings and get a really wholesome feel. Like in my mind, there's like I call it a living room guitar. Like what you sold me in that Guild, like that's a living room guitar.
Yeah.
It also still can't be played out without feeding back. Like we talked about that. Dude, I filled that thing with foam, and I was like, "You're gonna do this. You're gonna do what I tell you to."
Right.
He said, "Fuck off."
No chance. Plans. Sorry. Yeah, but you know, so it's not a D18 or D28, not boomy, but it's just it's what I had and it's what I learned on and felt right, and you know. So those were the main instruments that, and the mandolin that was stolen, the really nice mandolin, was a Kentucky. That was the brand Kentucky. It was from the early '80s. It's just kind of something you can't really find, but they made them in Japan back then, which was a nicer way than they make them now, is what I heard. So that's sort of just the bummer, but also the connections to that with my dad and just the shows that we had, and just it was like what I grew up playing, and it just has a lot of sentimental value. So if I ever see that thing out there someday, you know, I've heard stories of people getting reunited with their instruments decades later.
Yeah, dude, McCartney just got the Get Back bass. Yeah,
right.
It's like, dude, could you imagine like waiting 60 years, be like, all right, he probably won't be pissed now that I took this.
Right.
Get back to fall.
Still pissed.
It's like, it's a perfect part. Can I come backstage? It's like, no, dude, you stole from me at the prime of my career.
Sorry.
Dude, my favorite, like, McCartney basses to listen to was all the Rickenbackers. Like, I got a 335 that's like, it's probably my prized guitar that I'll play out on. I got one of my grandpa's guitars I adore that's hanging there, but it's a 335 that belonged to one of the religious brothers at my high school. He sold it to me in a Bob Evans parking lot before school one day. He had bad cancer. He knew he was going to pass, and he just wanted to see it go in the right hands.
Yeah.
And he had also sold a Rickenbacker to one of the other math teachers at the school. And this dude plays a mean fucking tuba, just like a king of the low end, just like a lot of things. And he still has this Rickenbacker. I was like, dude, I'm going to restrain myself from ever buying a Rickenbacker till you sell me that one.
Yeah.
It's weird the way that I've heard some people say like working retail makes you feel like, oh, they're all expendable. And it's like, I totally disagree with that, you know?
Yeah.
Some guitars have songs in them.
Absolutely.
Some guitars have souls in them, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I got to show you this this resonator that I just got that I feel like there's a dude living in it. It kind of creeps me out.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. Someone probably played it forever and their DNA is like in it, you know?
Yeah. I was talking to Mike Reeder about that, just saying like, we all have fretwear that comes along in time. Do you think the fretwear could leave you more inclined to play in a certain direction? You know, it's like there's predetermined paths that you might land on because of the way someone worked a neck.
Yeah, and the action, the way it's set up, I mean, definitely is all going to impact how you play, you know.
Yeah.
But you're totally right. Picking up an instrument, sometimes you pick it up right off the first time you play it. You get inspired to play something you've never played before. And it's like, how did that come about? You know, and it's in the instrument, you know?
Yeah. And if you don't give it that space to be kind of mystical, it's like, man, you're missing out on like a flavor of life that like not everything needs to be within your 5 limited senses and what you believe is factual to exist out here.
And it's, you know, I always think of like, you know, I have a lot of guitars, you have a lot of guitars, and it's a funny thing where people always, usually like partners, you know, they're like, that's your 20th guitar. Like, you're probably good, right? I I don't have one with a P90. I don't have, like there's things out there I need.
I've sworn to only buy lifers at this point. It's like if I'm buying something, I'm not gonna sell it when we're not making rent. It's like that's not my problem with this guitar.
Have you regretted? I've had some sales that I've just regretted. Like, I wish I would never sold that.
I think the dumbest thing I ever did is I bought a PRS from the Sam Ash Squad that I loved, and it was the most surprising gift I ever got. I remember like I had begged my parents to get me this guitar. I'm like, this is one of the first times that like, you ask your parents to buy you a couple guitars as a kid, and it's like, all right, that's kind of like it's close to a very kind gift, but it's not like we're gonna break the family bank account on it.
Right.
It's like this was a time where like I was asking for something different in a guitar. It's like a nice PRS SE. It's like $700, and I had begged leading up to this, and it's the end of Christmas morning. I've opened up my gifts, and like it's Christmas. You can't be upset about nothing. But my parents give me one last little box. And it's just a piece of paper in it. It says, "Go look in the closet." And that bitch is hanging there. And it was just the coolest guitar. It was in that Santana kind of orange crush.
I know exactly. Yeah.
And I loved that thing. And then I was coveting an American Strat for so long. So I traded a guy on Craigslist. I'm a 13-year-old kid. I traded this guy on Craigslist. It's not an American Strat. I just got played. And I end up with this makeshift shitty decal, like not even like Warmouth parts, just like such a piece of crap.
Squire neck that has a USA sticker on it or something.
Yeah, exactly. So not even that, like even worse than that. It was so bad. So I just donated at some point, and so I regret that guitar because I did have a sentimental attachment to like the kindness of my parents putting that in my hand, but also the bitterness of getting ripped off by an adult as a kid. It's like, God damn it,
That's a double whammy. Yeah.
That shit sours you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I've the biggest regret I have is selling an amp that I had. It was through Sam Ash. So we had a deal where if someone came in with a piece of gear that we couldn't sell because it was defective or something, then it was up for grabs between us. If we wanted to buy it. So I was lucky enough. This guy came in. He's like, I got this old Gretsch amp that's been sitting in my garage, and I don't think it works. We went to test it out, and we brought it in, and it turned on, but like it would pass sound scratchy. And I asked Donnelly at the time, like, can we even buy this? Or he's like, nah, dude. So I was like, all right, well, what do you want for it? And he's like, I don't care. I was like, I just want it out of my garage. Basically gave it to me, $20 or something like that. Yeah. And I took this thing home and like, okay, well, I'm just going to, whatever's wrong with it, it'll be worth it to fix it, And it needed some new tubes and some deoxit and whatever. And it just was cranking,
Dude, that's so cool. And why'd you get rid of it?
I was broke.
Word.
Money. So, and I sold it for, probably half of what it's worth. And this guy bought it, and he was like, I work for Vintage Guitar Magazine. I'll get you, 2-year subscription to Vintage Guitar Magazine, and half the cost of the amp. And it's like, which that didn't. Yeah, I'm sure he didn't have any impact on that. He's like, you toss these things out like, you got
a stack of magazines sitting in the corner where your amp used to be. You're like, fuck,
I can't play this stack of magazines.
It's amazing what a little bit of Deoxy or WD-40 will do something like that.
Yeah.
Dude, I had an iPhone recently that like it's the first time I had a phone that like sitting on the toilet just minding my own business, and it just goes dark forever. And I was like, oh, I'll take some compressed air to the bottom of this thing, and I'll charge it, and we'll be good to go. And I doused this thing in WD-40 because I didn't look at the can. And I was like, at least this was a phone that was already dead and not like the inside of a guitar. But boy, I'll never look at a can of WD-40 again. Yeah. Like, I'm like, no, I can't be trusted.
Really weird, yeah.
Exactly.
Looks the same, but yeah.
Yeah. What kind of a pedal board setup do you use on a Mando?
So I'm in the process of putting one together now. I've always used there's a pedal called the Tone Dexter, which is really cool. And what it does is you plug a mic, like your favorite mic, into it, and it'll record. You do a bunch of strumming and single note stuff, and it'll like listen to how the mic works, and then you can basically set it up to where you don't have to bring your mic anymore. It'll save that sound profile, and then you can plug in and get your mic sound, and you can save like, here's a 57, here's a KM 184, here's a Beta. Wild. It's pretty cool, So
Tell me the name again.
Tone Dexter, and there's one out now called Tone Dexter 2, and I don't think I need it. It's probably has some other features that mine doesn't have, but I love it. So
yeah, it
takes some time because you have to do all the sound profiles, and I usually use 2 mics basically, and just kind of go between the two.
Yeah. And what are those?
A 57 and I don't have a KM184. That's what I really want.
Yeah.
It's an SM81.
Cool.
I love that mic.
And those are both pencil condensers, right? The KM is at the Neumann?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Those are like $500 or something. So
and gigging on that kind of thing is just, irreverent.
Yeah. And that's another thing too is mics live are tough. I struggled with that for so long. I'd usually bring a 57 just because the condenser mic on a stage is asking for trouble. I found, especially if it's a noisy bar, or there's monitors nearby or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That was part of the impetus to go for the in-ears, was to be able to use nice mics and not have monitors on stage. Mm-hmm. So we're working towards that. But
we almost need to have like a mic mount that's like I noticed this with Mike Morawski. It's like he really likes to play with a mic in front of him. But he's a guy that moves a lot with the music. And as much as I love that for dynamic that you're controlling, when I'm trying to control dynamic, now we're in a bit of a power struggle in that. It's like we all have a little bit of variability in how we move the instrument, whether you're going to have 12th fret point at that thing and we're getting this nice wholesome sound, or you give me the back of that bridge in your solo section. It's like, unless you're dialed in and going for that, it's just variance that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and where you set the mic, like if we're recording in a studio, I like to set the mic a little further away.
Yeah.
Just because you get the air and it kind of like the sound kind of joins, because there's so many different spots that it comes out of. And if you mic one of those in particular, you're going to get that particular sound, but it's not the way the mandolin sounds in the room.
Yeah.
It's like a little more punchy than it probably would be. So you step the mic back a little bit and it kind of comes together.
That's super interesting. I never really thought about the convergence point that you kind of get with the body and the way the air moves, and also a bit of the dulling of the strings. Until I had a fine enough tuner, I never really thought about like the moment you pluck, you're sharp. The moment it settles, that's where you're tuning for. It's like because it's only a brief moment in time where that thing's going to be a little bit much. But
how hard you fret? You fret just a slight bit harder, you're going to go sharp.
Yeah. I got a buddy that's looking to buy his first nice electric. He goes, "What do you think about scallop frets?" I was like, "Don't even fuck with that, dude." Yeah, exactly. Right. You don't want to be Yngwie, okay? No. You're not ready for this.
Right, yeah.
Do you listen to Rick Beato? Is that his?
Oh, I love Rick Beato, yeah.
Dude, his stuff blows my mind. And his Yngwie interview recently, it's like, hearing him talk about, he's like, when you bend a note, you better know what you're bending to. I'm like, oh, Yngwie, that just hurts. That makes me, I suck. I know I suck, but I didn't need this today.
Right.
And it's like, to think he's doing that with scallop frets, like, whoa.
I don't even know why. Like, what's the point of it? Like, somebody.
Well, I think it's not having to hit the fretboard as you're moving. Like, it's just a little bit less surface tension to have to deal with as you're really moving quickly across the neck.
Okay, like when he's doing the legato, the
yeah,
stuff.
I think it's just it's a smoothness thing, but I could be wrong in that.
It just seems like you're asking for trouble. Like
when it seems like you're also shaving down the important part of your fretboard.
Right. Yeah.
Like I like seeing a dirty telly that looks like this guy spent a lot of time on the 7th fret of his B string, but I don't need you to give me a C profile on every single one of these, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just bizarre.
Right. That's a lot. So, so like, a 57 is what I used for a long time just because it was a good mix of getting the range of the sound and not being so feedback prone, and then finding where to put that. And then I just started going direct for a long. I found a really nice pickup, the K&K pickup. That's in here. I love those.
Yeah, those are incredible.
Yeah.
And the way they apply, it's just a little tape, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't put it in myself, but I mean that is how they're installed, and it was night and day to find that. Because I went through a few, like a Fishman one and a LR bags, and I don't know if it just I didn't have it the right spot or what it was, but it just didn't sound natural. And this one really sounds just how I want it. Through a nice DI.
It's interesting to consider all the science that goes behind this thing. That, like, we don't really know what we're chasing at the end of the day. Like, there's a cool Paul Reed Smith clinic where he's talking about, like, there's a lot of subtractive guitars out there where the effort that you put into this thing doesn't get fully delivered by what the instrument does. He goes, we are here to make neutral guitars that reciprocate what you put into it.
Right.
It's like to ask the same thing of your pickups. The feeling that you get when this thing sits on your chest and you give the meatiest option possible. It's like, I need that coming through the PA.
Right.
No additional low end and bullshit. Nothing above what I need it to be. Yeah. No mid scoops that I didn't ask you for. Like, give me it.
Right.
It's so peculiar.
The mic's just the way. That's what my target is at all times. Is like, can I get that mic'd sound live? So I think, and I use a Fishman amp that has 2 channels. So sometimes if I can get away with it, direct into one, mic into the other one, and do a combination of the two, and that's really
Nice.
That's the sweet spot.
And do you have a vocal mic always sitting there for you? Then you have a 57. Do you mount those on the same stand so it's very approachable, or?
Yeah, well, these days, if I'm going to do the mic, I'll bring the SM81.
Nice.
Yeah, just because if I can do it, usually I can't, but if the gig's right, and if it's a quiet enough stage, or we're far enough apart, or
reverent enough
quiet
crowd.
yeah, then I can do the SM81, and I'll have a little clip on that goes on the vocal mic and just points right at it, and I can blend the two with the amp, and it's perfect. Yeah,
it's such a difficult pursuit, especially when you are like, when you're playing. Is it a 4-piece in the Freddies?
5 now.
Okay, cool.
Fox.
Nice.
Yeah, so we have Jake on guitar, mandolin, Fox on fiddle, Graham plays tenor guitar now, and then Chris Werner's on upright bass.
Nice. Why does bluegrass have no percussion outside of that? What's the resistance against drummers?
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the bass and mandolin, you kind of have a kick and a snare, and that's the closest thing. But I mean, there's so many like jokes about bluegrass players like not even wearing shoes. So drums and electric is a next step.
Yeah. Well, do you find it weird to step into an environment where you don't have to do that, where you have to kind of disengage this backbeat thing that you've really made part of your playing?
Not as much. No, I can kind of play the role either, where it fits, and there's so many different ways to even go about the rhythm too. Like I try to think of, Chris Thiele is obviously the master, but Sam Bush has my favorite sort of rhythm, and I couldn't really do that now without like taking a lot of warm up because he's really like fast,
Yeah, and how do you warm up the wrist for that kind of a?
Just shake it. You gotta shake it out.
Okay, dude, that's my favorite thing to see a player doing.
You got to. You gotta, because it goes up to your shoulder. You don't even think you're putting all that stuff in, but if you're tense there, you're gonna be tense down here.
Yeah.
And it shows. I took a lot of years off from mandolin, really, not completely off, but when I was working at Sam Ash and the gigs we weren't playing as much, and I was playing more guitar at home. Like when I'm at home, I'm guitar.
Yeah.
All the time. So there was like a number of years where I was losing chops, and then we started playing more, and I found like, oh man, like my technique is totally different, and my wrist I would find where I'd be playing, and it would just slowly like turn like this, like out of just being tense, and I was like, I'd see it on videos, and I could feel it happening. I'm like, I can't do what I used to be able to do, and it was frustrating. So I really took a lot of time to get loose again, really pay attention to keeping my hand, parallel with the strings, and as you go with different strings, you kind of have to change the way you pick as you go up and down, almost like a bow. Like you have to bow from different angles. You kind of pick from different angles, and just a little bit, and resting my hand on the bridge a little bit versus being like out and disconnected. That's where it was tense. I don't always have it on there, but sometimes.
Yeah.
But I just had to be mindful of that, and I would just watch other musicians that are really good and watch their hands.
Yeah,
and how they're doing it. It's all about being as loose as possible.
And it's so hard to get yourself to a place where you aren't having to actively think about having good form and you're still keeping it. It's like a pretty unforgiving place.
Yeah, it's just frustrating when you had it once.
Yeah,
and it's like you just think it's like riding a bike. You just always have it. And now you take some time off and it's gone.
Yeah. After doing those sessions with Fox, my wife mentioned that she wanted to learn how to play violin fiddle. Mm-hmm. So I was immediately like, let's buy it. Let's I want to play with this thing. The bow is the most unforgiving piece of musical equipment I've ever experienced. It's like, boy, nothing makes you feel shittier than the fact that you have zero consistency in your movement. You didn't grease this thing up right. You're out of tune.
Yeah, I tried, and I couldn't take my own practicing. I was just like, no. I'm like, it's right there by your ear. And I'm like, no, I can't.
That's why horn players' parents never come out to gigs, even when they're good.
Right.
It's like, I paid the piper.
Yeah, I've heard that. I'm done. It's funny.
Well, brother, as we start to wrap this up, is there anything that you want to promote? Anything you want to push?
Oh, man. The Freddies are playing at Arnold's on April 27th.
Very nice.
It's a really cool show because they're doing this thing every month where they have a local artist print a unique poster for the band and that night every month this year. So there's been some really cool ones. I think Jess Lamb was January's.
Nice.
I haven't seen what February's and March's was. I think March was the St. Patrick's Day one. But I haven't seen ours, and Pam Kravitz is the artist, and she's I don't know how to really describe her art, but it's almost like it's really colorful and like pops, like kind of like a pop art or whatever. But I don't know if that's how she's gonna take our look, because she sort of asked like, what input do you want on this, and we've all been basically like, you're the artist, here's some things. We're kind of a rootsy Cincinnati band. A lot of our songs are about Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of history, in town. So like, just go with that. Maybe some references to some lyrics, But I wanted to just be surprised. And so I have no idea what it's going to be like. I think they do 50 prints, and they're all going to be signed. And
that's awesome.
And every month at Fox's band, I think theirs is May or June, that they're doing the same thing at Arnold's.
I think I have one of the Jam Band Jovi posters over there that they got me.
Well, I don't know the one that's going to be released for their Arnold show.
Oh, it might be different.
Because they release them, it's kind of like a secret. They release them that month.
Cool.
So yeah, it probably would be different.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. That's just going to be a great show. I think we're going to record it, video record it, audio record it.
Nice.
Yeah. Arnold's is like one of our homes. We used to play there every month for years and years and years. We did this one really cool thing for a while called the Freddy's Music Review. So it was like almost like a skit show. We'd have a guest each month. We would learn their songs, and then we would play. They play a few songs with us, but we'd play their songs with them, as like their backup band. And it was so different every month. We had Greg Schaber, who's like a electric guitar player, and then we had Ricky Nye playing some boogie woogie piano, and we had
Ricky Nye,
some great players, and it was just so much fun to kind of dig into their stuff. And then in between that, we'd have like skits, like one act plays and stuff we would do. So it was really cool.
Did you happen to see the Raisins?
I didn't go to that show, no, but those guys are the best.
I had never heard any of that music before, and like a buddy that was like, dude, I went to all 3 shows. Like, okay, I gotta listen to this. What a fucking band, dude.
Yeah.
Bam Powell, Bob. Rob Fetter.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get Rob to come on the show at some point. Yeah, I've heard great. Dude, what a distinct voice and such wild playing.
Wild playing. Did you see the Raisins video from like WBN in 1980 or 81? No. It's on YouTube. Check it out. These guys are kids. They're like, and they're playing the same songs and just tearing it up. They do a Dr. Robert. Did you see that version?
No.
It's completely unique. So cool. But it's awesome to hear them, back in the early 80s, and they just look so different. It's just awesome.
That's comical.
It's so cool that they were doing that they're like live. I assume it was on TV, it was we should do something. It'd be so cool to have something like that. You could just turn on a local channel and see a local band.
Yeah. When I think we're starting to make a turn again to where I say this a lot on the show, but when you go to New York and you talk to listeners of that populace, they take ownership of the bands that come out of their market. They love New York bands. Yeah. Chicagoans love Chicago bands. Like, there's something about believing in the trajectory in a way that I knew first. It's like an early adopter's pride. We do not have that right now.
Right.
And I think that is a change that is taught more than it just happens. And it really does happen with a lot of players.
It seems like a lot of bands have to go out of town to make it. I think of, I don't know, Walk the Moon seemed to be a success, a hometown success. It seemed like they made it here, but there's other bands, that just like, I remember the Greenhorns from a long time ago, and they went on to be like the Raconteurs with Jack White.
No shit.
Yeah. Or some of those guys, not the whole band, but 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
Forgive me if I'm...
Oh, no, you're...
But they kind of have to leave town and go to New York or Nashville or Austin or whatever it is to kind of blow up, and it's like, it'd be nice if we could just...
If we could, sound. Take appreciation then. Like, for the Freddies to have been around for, you said, 20 years.
25 at this point.
You got to respect an institution that's put in that kind of time and make sure when given the opportunity that there's reverence for the time poured into that. So hopefully this live album really gets that appreciation, love.
Yeah. And our goals have always been different. Jake, from the very beginning, didn't want to tour, didn't want to, like, all these songs are written about Cincinnati, a lot of them, so you can't really go to St. Louis and sing about, like Flying Pigs and stuff.
Yeah, right. You can rip it, yeah.
Right. So that was kind of a different, it was nice to have that agreed upon early to where, I didn't necessarily say, oh no, we got to tour, we got to do this and that. It's like, we just knew, like, we're going to stay here. We're going to play to Cincinnati crowds and play our Cincinnati songs.
Yeah.
And it's so nice to just be comfortable in that.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of pressure, I think, to just grow and do all different things. And as much as that, I'd love to, maybe have a wider audience, but, that was sort of our goal, is to just kind of be a local band.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, as time goes on, we continually turn more and more inward to find things that surprise us, that make us feel like we can embrace what we are in this town and what we have to offer.
There's a lot. We have such a great music scene, since I've been a part of it, I've just looked around like, man, there's so many different styles, like a punk rock scene. It's amazing. A thriving folk scene.
Yeah.
Sort of a newer wave of like rock, that seems to be a generational sort of shift. I just love, seeing some of the younger players come up and do some really cool stuff. Jazz, we have great jazz players in town.
We have a gnarly jazz scene, which that kind of makes me upset. Where it's just like we just don't have a listening populace for jazz. I went to see the Bluest Big Band the other day, and it was nice that room's full, but it's like this is only a 40-seater, and this band's been doing this for 44 years, and it goes pretty hard. There's a guy in the front just getting railed right now by a horn section where it's like we could use 5 feet in the front and then packing it around there,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Paul Patterson's one of my favorite musicians. You should have him on too, because he's in the symphony, but he also plays with the Faux Frenchman, which is like a Django Reinhardt gypsy jazz. And he has his own project that he does. I think at what's the place in Walnut Hills?
Vivace?
Yeah,
Cafe Vivace.
I think on one Tuesday a month. But he always puts together the best lineup and just an amazing. He's probably my favorite local musician. I mean, he can play anything with strings, but he also speaks. He speaks like a musician. He speaks like he's playing music with words. It's very sort of dreamy and ethereal, but as a musician what he's talking about, and it's always right. It's important. It's always dead on the heart of it. He cuts to the heart of it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to be able to do, and it just. I was really brought to a really wholesome place by getting to be on your podcast with the folks you work with, because I've known you for a decade of my life now, and then you've put some really important instruments in my hands. We've had a lot of good conversations, but it felt like a moment of seeing something I never knew you were so capable and so great at, and just realizing again and again that the people that make our music scene special are folks that have many dimensions of themselves that they pour into this one thing, and it's really by our own capacity to utilize those things that you see it flourish and bloom the way it should. So
yeah, I'm inspired by the folks I work with, and they all have amazing bands of their own, and it's just so great it makes me want to be a better servant for our folks, but also musician as well, just to keep it. What's important, keep that focused in mind and do the right thing. Yeah.
Well, tell them the name of the band again.
Which band?
Freddies.
Oh, Jake Speed and the Freddies.
Jake Speed and the Freddies.
FreddiesMusic.com.
Cool. And then any other projects that you got to push or wherever they can follow you?
Another band called Farm Report, and we recorded an album at my house this past year, I guess it's been, and I don't know. Our next show, I believe, is the 20. It's the day after our Freddies show. It's
nice.
That's a Saturday. So Farm Report's playing our CD release party, I guess, at Shake It Records on the 28th.
Great place to see a show, man.
Yeah. So I forgot those dates right. 27th is Saturday, 28th at Shake It.
Is there a Farm Report website?
I don't believe so, but there's a Facebook page.
Okay, cool. That's a great name, dude.
It's awesome. Yeah.
All right, y'all.
Yeah.
Justin Todhunter, thanks for watching the show, everybody. We'll be back, I think, on Wednesday. I have no idea. Check the schedule. Peace, players. Much love.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for doing it.
That was awesome. It flew by, too. I don't know how long that was, but that flew by. That was 2 hours ago.
Yeah, easily hour 45.
Yeah. Yeah, red light syndrome always does kick in. It's funny. Have you ever, just put tape over the red light to fool someone into thinking they're not being recorded?
Definitely a good way to do it.
I went to the recording workshop in Chillicothe, and they threw out some tricks, to kind of get people to perform the way you want them to. Like if someone's timid and they're singing kind of quiet, turn down their headphones so they sing louder.
Yeah.
But really, they're just singing. You're getting them to give you more signal, when really